Hello, my name is Nga Yuan, and this is EFM, the Resource Center for all conversations on entrepreneurship in action. And this week's Market Access is where we talk about the journey that companies with new technologies will take to find and build traction in markets outside of their own. For the next few episodes, we will be featuring some companies from the UK under the Tech Export Academy that will be on a virtual trade mission to the Asia Pacific, specifically to Malaysia. And in the last few episodes, we spoke to producer of ultra-low power semiconductor radios and modules for IoT communications, and also a company that is all about camera-based predictive AI solutions to improve the interactions between people and machines. Today, we will be speaking to a company that does a mapping tech for urban planning and architecture, Space Syntax. And join me as we welcome Tim Stonor, the Managing Director of Space Syntax. Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Yuan. It's lovely to be here. How are you?
We're good. How well acquainted are you with Malaysia?
Not as well as I should be. I've only visited 3 times. I've spoken at a couple of conferences. I have Malaysian friends. I have some good, we can talk academic research connections. So I'm at the beginning of my journey.
Oh, that's so exciting. Let's talk about Space Syntax. Let's talk about the service and the products that you have that is making all of us feel very excited about mapping technology. Tell us.
Well, we've pioneered a science around human behavior. My interest as an architect and an urban planner is really in people. It's the buildings, yes, we have to contain, we have to shelter, we have to give comfort to people, but what really matters are the people. So Space Syntax studies how people move, how we behave in buildings and in streets and public spaces, how we interact, because that's the value. That's the value of buildings and cities. It's how we come together, share ideas, innovate, run businesses efficiently, enjoy ourselves, spend money. This drives our economy, it drives our culture. So our focus is how can we use technology to understand and better predict how people are going to behave to make sure we get the design of the buildings right for them.
So this is placemaking, but with the use of technology.
Exactly.
So can you maybe perhaps tell us very specific examples of how it could actually make the way we relate to buildings or we relate to the environment better because of your technology?
Yeah, well, I think everybody has had the experience of getting lost in a building, in a badly designed building, maybe feeling confused. And at that point, your brain stops enjoying what's around it. Maybe you're lost in a museum or in a shopping center, and you want to get out as fast as possible, at which point the relationship between you and the product, you and the object is broken. You just want to look after your own safety. Interesting, because a lot of shopping buildings were deliberately designed to confuse people. If you talk to the architects of the 1980s and 90s and early 2000s, the idea was you would confuse and make these buildings hard to escape from. And the belief, wrongly, was that would make us all stay in them,
stay in there longer,
spend more money, and we've understood that what really matters is for people to feel psychologically comfortable, and that what supports that is having simple layouts, clear sightlines, a simple memory of how you got from the entrance of the building to where you now are, and simplicity really matters.
At what stage and what kind of a company will really use your product?
Well, property developers who are wanting to create placemaking. They want to add value to their developments by bringing the fun, bringing the enjoyment, bringing the commercial performance so that people don't feel afraid. They actually feel like they want to be there. We work a lot with developers at the early stages of projects. So as an architect, I'm working right at the beginning when maybe a developer is choosing whether they should buy a site or buy a building. And then we help them to sketch the idea of what they could get out of it. And then we work with other architects down the line they then provide the details. So we're at that conceptual stage. We work with cities. We work with municipalities who are wanting to attract development to them, wanting to keep places safe, wanting to generate, we call it the urban buzz. You know, when you're in a city and you're on the street of a city, or you're in the room of a building, and it just feels that buzz of being with other people, hearing what's going on, feeling part of it. We're trying to understand, what is it that the design of the building, what is it that the design does to create that buzz? And that's what we have developed our reputation around.
So if the developer has very little idea about what they want, how can you make the experience of working together or developing something together better?
Well, we have our track record. So, you know, that's one place to talk, to begin a conversation with a new prospective partner and client, is to say, look, we've been working not in Malaysia, but we've been working all over the world, in Australia, in the UK. We started in the UK 30 plus years ago. And we can show you where we've been able to change the way that, for example, buildings like the British Museum or famous department stores in London that have taken our advice and reorganized themselves and reorganized the flows of people through them. Trafalgar Square, many of the people watching this have perhaps visited London and sat on the central steps of Trafalgar Square. And that's a project designed by Norman Foster, the great British architect, where my role with my colleagues was to advise Norman Foster and his colleagues that those steps were a good idea. And those steps are not historic, they're new. They were only built in the early 2000s, but they eased the flow from Leicester Square, past the National Gallery, through Trafalgar Square, down into Whitehall. And they create a new route and a new journey and a new space to add on to what was there before. So we like to take people to places that we've worked on that work well, and then talk about their particular issues. And every site is different. Every place is different. Every culture is different. So how do we study some great places in Malaysia, great places that people want to try to copy?
So how does this, when you say technology, when you say science of placemaking, that means you study behavioral, you study the flow of people, for example. What do you use? What sort of tool do you use to measure that?
Well, there are two main parts. The first is people watching. We literally sit and watch the world go by, and we either count with a pen, or we count with a digital counter, or we strap a camera to a building and film, or we use mobile data increasingly. And so we're trying to systematically observe human behavior, because there's very little scientific research in this area. You know, we know more about the behavior of animals, of mountain gorillas, because we've watched them, and we don't watch ourselves enough. So that's the first part. And you realize that behavior is not chaotic. It follows patterns. Certain days of the week are busier than others. Certain times of the day are busier than others. And therefore, you can begin to predict the patterns that people follow. For example, most people, most of the time, take the simplest, most direct route from their origin to their destination. Now, that is perhaps not very surprising. It's common sense. But talk to most architects that have been through architecture school like me, and we were taught to do the opposite, to confuse people, to take them on interesting journeys past our wonderful buildings and make it very, very complex. People like simplicity. And so by observing, you can generate evidence and demonstrate why you need to keep things simple. And then the second part, oh, and by the way, we follow people a lot, literally walking behind people at a nice, comfortable distance and just seeing where they cross the street. Do they use the pedestrian crossing or not? Do they take the route that goes past the beautiful buildings, or do they take the shorter, simpler route that goes past the ugly ones? And guess what? They take the shorter, simpler route more than they take the beautiful route sometimes. Do they prefer shade or sun? Well, it depends on the time of day and the time of the year. All of those things become part of the record. The second part to it is the clever bit about predicting the future. And we use algorithms which measure the connectivity of street networks, the degree to which a route is going to be simple or complicated. And that's about mathematics, geometry, routes, distances, angles, and we've built a software system which simplifies all of this so that we can use it when we're sketching to predict whether a plan is going to work or not, and it becomes a design tool.
Wow. So how much data is needed before it can move into the space of predictive analysis? How many people do you follow?
Yeah, a few hundred is better than a few dozen. So, we want to be dealing with more than just one or two. Because it's not, often, again, architects and planners say, well, I like doing this and I like doing that. And yes, but you're an architect. You're not necessarily like everyone else that's going to be using this. Let's study a good population. And so in the course of a couple of days, by filming, you can actually count hundreds of thousands of people. And that then helps to improve the probability that you're going to get it right for them. And but actually that takes, as I say, just a couple of days. It's quick. And then the input to the predictive modeling can be little more to begin with than just a sketch. So we've built a very simple piece of software which takes those routes, takes those street connections or the rooms and corridors of a building, and it starts with the sketch and immediately predicts. And then you can add more data. You can add, is it warm or cold? Is the wind blowing hot? Or you can add other detail later. But to begin with, we like to start simple and quick. And that's the best way to get into a dialogue.
So wouldn't it be really exciting for you to anticipate how it's going to be like studying the people and the flow and the behaviors of, let's say, the people in Malaysia? Because we are clearly quite different with jaywalk, for example, compared to the people in UK or some other.
You jaywalk? You jaywalk?
We do.
Well, maybe we should have an international jaywalking competition to see who is the best and the worst.
I don't think we want to win. I really don't want to win, but oh well.
Yeah. Yes. Well, look, we always love to learn from new places. I had a client, I won't say which country, but one client who said, there's no need for you to observe. I can tell you in my country, everyone walks, if they're heading west, they walk on the right side of the street. If they're heading east, they walk on the left side of the street. He was so confident, but he was completely wrong. And we're all sometimes wrong, whether we admit it or not, about some things. And that's where evidence really helps, is let's look at things independently, objectively. But of course, we'd love to see what's different about the way Malaysian people use space. And every culture is different, and that's what's fascinating. Sometimes the way we shop is similar. If I was to try to predict, I think we would be reasonably robustly certain about how people flow through a shopping center or a market, because it's almost what makes us able to trade internationally and between cultures, is we have to understand each other because we're trading. When we eat, when we're at home in our domestic setting, do we sit or stand? Do we kneel? What do we hold in our hands when we eat? What order do we eat the food in? That's when we tend as cultures to really differentiate ourselves, because it's what marks us out with our identity. It also helps us keep a little distance sometimes and introduce people slowly to our cultures and have a bit of fun that they pick up the wrong thing in the wrong order with the wrong object. But shopping, public space, public
Very
transport systems. Yeah.
Very interesting. So what is your interest in Malaysia then? I mean, when you are expanding into a new market, why would Malaysia be part of your expansion?
Well, because Malaysia as a country, I think there's a couple of interesting characteristics. First, a rapidly developing economy, lots of ambition for the future. And when I look at the demographics, a young population, demographically very young. And I think young people increasingly are ambitious about carbon. They're ambitious about lifestyle. They don't want to sit in traffic jams. They don't want to be dependent on cars. If they are like young people, I'm working in other countries in the world, just pick one, Kazakhstan, very, very different setting, but young demographic, and really fascinating working there, how carbon aware people are and health aware people are. And what we're offering is walkability, the ability to cycle, the use of public transport, the fact that taking public transport is not a sign of poverty, it's a sign of choice among the wealthy. And a really great economy is built on public transport, walking and cycling. It's not built on having the biggest car. So these, I think, may be challenging to some of the assumptions that have been made, not only in Malaysia, but other rapidly growing countries, that it's all about the car. And we've understood we've seen change happen in the UK now. The coronavirus has accelerated it, where people are much more aware, working from home, walking to the shops near home, being able to get on a bike, and doing this in all climates. So working in really hot countries where walking is seen to be, we do a lot of work in the Middle East, where walking is seen to be what people want to do. But sometimes the consultants who've come previously off the aeroplane have said, you want air conditioning. You only want to be inside sealed buildings. Well, now with the coronavirus, we need ventilation more than anything. And the most ventilated, healthiest places to be are outdoors or indoors with the windows open. How can we rediscover some of the great architecture of Malaysia that shaded, caught the wind, cooled the air, and created the places that then can be the buzz places where people can gather and be sociable once again?
Wow, I'm so excited just listening to you. Maybe because of the, lockdown that we've been in for a long, long time. Being out there, feeling all that you've said is amazing. Does it also mean that you have to be here physically in order to start a project, or can this be done? I don't know. How do you do
it
this?
helps, doesn't it? There's nothing like eating the food and meeting the people directly that you're working with, and socializing and working around a table. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. There's nothing beats that. But for the last year, we've been like this, and our business has continued, and we've managed to, win some wonderful projects in places that we've not been able to visit yet. And that's one of the benefits of a digital form of modeling like we do, that we can receive data that someone's collected on our behalf and sent over to us to process, analyze, and then react to in terms of designs and plans that we can draw up. And it's going to be the nature of a global economy that we will continue to work remotely. But I can't wait to getting back to traveling and being in places and really sort of getting the feel of a place, which is the smell of the cooking, the air, the sound that doesn't come through. I know we have wonderful technical engineering support on this conversation right now, but it's not quite like being there, is it?
I agree. I absolutely agree. Well, good luck on your virtual trade mission. And if, they missed the mission and they would like to get in touch with you, where should they go to?
spacesyntax.com. That's our website, and from there they'll find the channels, whether it's Instagram or WhatsApp or your preferred channel of choice, and reach out to me directly, Tim Stonor. And I always, I'm here to take questions, and I'd love to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and good luck and all the best.
Thank you, Yuan. You too. Bye-bye.